Please watch the video until the end to hear the final confession that ties their truths together. Chapter 1. The Rules of a Small Town. He who would tell this story remembers the summer the town learned how stubborn people can be when they mistake courage for indifference. The town was the sort that keeps libraries in oak and gossip in better shape than the weather forecast. The high school had its own gravity. Cliques gravitated, reputations orbited, and promises, made in the margin of notebooks, were taken as sober contracts. At the eye of that particular storm were two sisters. June, a warm-eyed sophomore who practiced kindness like a secret skill, and Sylvie, her older sibling, blunt and brilliant, who wore skepticism like a shield. Their father, protective and precise, had a list of conditions for any boy who wished to court his daughters. He insisted on respect, steadiness, and a portfolio of decency. It was not cruelty, rather an armor born of earlier losses. Across the quad moved Lucas, a musician with a crooked smile and a laugh that sounded like rain on tin. He lived on the periphery of the easy crowd. Talented, restless, and with a reputation that preferred short stories to commitments. Lucas noticed June's easy laugh at the pond and told his friend Nate that it would be nice if someone as earnest as June had a proper spring. Nate, however, worried about his own quiet hopes and saw June as a plausible dream. Words exchanged over coffee turned into a plan. Inventive, risky, and not entirely honest. Chapter 2. A Bet and a Song. Lucas agreed to a task without knowing exactly why he did it. He would be the one to draw Sylvie out, convince her to give up her guardedness enough that their father, satisfied with a real relationship, would relax his rules and let June breathe. The arrangement had the clumsy etiquette of teenage ingenuity. Money exchanged hands, jokes were made, and Lucas promised he would act like he cared. He met Sylvie in the hallway. An accidental collision turned mission briefing. She smelled of peppermint and truth, and she dismissed him in 2 sentences, like a judge delivering a short verdict. Lucas persisted because the plan had begun to feel less like a job and more like a dare at which he no longer laughed. As he pursued her, he found himself composing songs. Not the shallow lines he'd written for late-night bravado, but verses that hovered and then landed, precise and aching. He discovered the small architecture of her smile, how it softened after she spoke about books, how she rolled her eyes when asked about future certainty. These discoveries slipped past the facade until he was no longer certain whether he was acting or learning how to feel again. Nate watched with a mixture of relief and guilt. The plan, designed as an expedient solution to his own loneliness, was shifting into something else. An education about the cost of manipulating hearts. The narrator knows this because he remembers the nights when Nate could not sleep, repeating the moral calculations in the dark. He remembers the instant the line between what was promised and what had become real first trembled. Chapter 3. The Quiet Unmasking. Sylvie did not fall in the way pyramids topple, or in the way actors do in plays. Her defense mechanisms were old architecture, thick with narrow windows. But Lucas's attention was not the parade of conquests she expected. He listened. He made mistakes, awkward jokes, insincere brags, but then he returned with a small truth. He remembered the exact place where she'd left a line unfinished, and when he filled it, it felt like handing back a misplaced part of her. She called him reckless in the language of someone who had been burned by paradoxes. You assume everything can be fixed with words. He learned that apologies were not paper currency that bought forgiveness. They were a practice, repeated and earnest. They spent a Sunday at the riverbank. She sketching, he strumming. He taught her one of his crude songs, and she pointed out where the cadence made the line mean something different. She taught him to be careful with what he claimed to feel. In the margins of their afternoons, June and Nate grew closer, sincere and clumsy, like plant shoots striving for sunlight. But the narrator watches the undercurrent. Lucas's eyes found Sylvie more and more often, not because he had been paid to perform, but because her guardedness was a kind of music he wanted to learn. Chapter 4. The Reckoning. Truth unspooled at the worst possible time. During a spring festival where everyone's faces were lit by strings of yellow bulbs and everyone believed in theater, a confession could be fumbled in a chorus line or honed in a quiet room. Instead, their secrets were dragged into afternoon light. Sylvie stumbled upon Nate's original offer and Lucas's payment note. Crude, impersonal proof of a scheme that had invaded what she believed to be spontaneous. The betrayal was a simple geometry. Lines that had once connected people now intersected at a point that severed trust. She felt the music they had made deflate into a pastiche. Lucas tried to explain. Words faltered. He offered an account of feelings that had changed mid-course, of being surprised by his own honesty. He told her he had been a spectator to his own transformation, and that each moment they shared had been real enough to break him when it crumbled. She reacted with the cold reasoning of someone who had no appetite for rhetoric. She packed her books, her sarcasm, and her wounded dignity and left. The narrator remembers the silence after. Not empty, but saturated with what might have been. Music turned thin, and June's smile dimmed because she loved the person who had been honest with her. Nate's relief was poisoned by the price it exacted. Lucas walked the campus with the kind of regret that expands the past until it covers you like fog. Chapter 5. Remaking and Repair. They did not reconcile with a cinematic flourish. Instead, there were small reparations. An essay he read aloud on a bench, a letter left under a library book, a song played outside a dorm where she could not refuse to hear it. Some of these were performative gestures, and some were sincere. The narrator, who has the patience of someone who has seen many broken things refit, learned to tell them apart. Sylvie needed evidence, not speeches. Lucas learned to build it. He volunteered at the community garden she favored and stopped showing up with exaggerated bravado. When he said he was sorry, he meant that he would be accountable tomorrow and the next day after that. The town watched, because towns watch human repair like they watch the weather, waiting to see whether it will hold. Slowly, trust returned like green after winter. It was not an instantaneous bloom, but a careful, stubborn unraveling of old defenses. June and Nate found their rhythm without the scaffolding of deception, and the father learned that rules, like fences, sometimes need a hinge. The narrator notes that the hardest parts of love are often the ones that look most like ordinary responsibility. Showing up, keeping promises, and allowing the other to be wrong and whole simultaneously. Chapter 6. The List. The story closes not with a proclamation, but with a paper folded twice and left on a bench where Lucas used to play. Sylvie's handwriting is precise and narrow. Each line a small incision of honesty. The note is a list. 10 lines that begin sharp and then soften. They catalog grievances, impatience, careless promises, the way he made a stage of tenderness. They are not a litany of hate, but a measure taken toward the truth. He who tells this tale kept that list and read it until the words became a map of the woman who had been hurt and who still loved with a guarded fury. The last line does not say, "I hate you," in the way a heart closes. It says something far more dangerous and honest. That she loved despite every flaw. That love had been present among the faults. And that the pain of betrayal had only sharpened the clarity of what she felt. There is no grand finale. Just two people who understand, finally, the precariousness of good intentions and the steadiness of chosen care. They move forward not as redeemed caricatures, but as people who have learned the anatomy of one another's faults and still choose to bear them together. The narrator, a man who remembers the season like a kept photograph, folds the memory inward. He knows that love in this town is rarely perfect, often messy, and almost always worth the slow labor of repair. He closes his notebook and walks away, satisfied that the reckoning led to something honest, even if it was earned the hard way. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, Give the video a like, leave a comment with your favorite line, and share the video with friends.